We're good to go. Welcome, everybody. Before we start, being asked to remind council that this portion of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. I'll remind council to speak clearly and project their voice when they are talking so people viewing at home can hear. We'll now do a roll call of council for the benefit of the public watching this meeting. When I call your name, please wave at your camera and say here or present. I, Councillor McMillan, am present and chairing this meeting. Mayor Shawns.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Martin. Thank you. Councillor Merlihan.
I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Redicott.
Here.
Thank you. And Councillor Shawns.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Could I please get someone to move a resolution that we reconvene and open the session? Councillor Martin, second. Councillor Shawns. I almost got Councillor Martin to second on the screen after you moved it in person. This is, I saw you in person and I said, Councillor Martin moved. And then the first hand I saw on my screen was you. And I almost said second by Councillor Martin. So did you get that? I forgot who seconded it. Okay, excellent. All in favor? That is passed. Thank you very much. Try to keep my eye on that. Do any members of council have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Mayor Shawns.
Thank you. Item 10.3 regarding Spruce Lawn. My husband Brian represents Spruce Lawn in this matter.
Thank you. And Councillor Merlihan.
My interest is the same one, 10.3 with Spruce Lawn, as Brian L. Shantz is a client.
Thank you. There are no items to come forward from closed session. We'll move on to planning public. This meeting constitutes the formal public meeting required under sections 8.3 and 11.c of the Municipal Act and section 34 of the Planning Act. The meeting is for information purposes only, and no decisions will be made at this time. The application will be brought forward at a future meeting of the Committee of the Whole when staff has had an opportunity to review all submissions and prepare recommendations. All those attending will be given an opportunity to speak and are asked to submit a written outline of their oral submission to the clerk. Please contact planning staff at the township to receive further notifications about the application. Zoning. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Township of Woolwich to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Woolwich prior to approval or refusal of a proposal, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Woolwich prior to approval or refusal of a proposal, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. I declare the planning public meeting to be open, and with that, we will go to Mr. Jeremy Vink, Manager of Planning, who has an informational update about backyard chickens. Mr. Vink, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. So as you are aware, this is a zone change application. It's application 7/2020 for the Township of Woolwich to amend the general regulations in our zoning bylaw to remove the word chickens from our list of prohibited animals and accessory structures. It is also a public meeting to deal with our animal control bylaw. So it's not often we get to mix two bylaws at once. So we're dealing with the animal control bylaw at the same time. This application would apply to residential properties with accessory buildings where they could then allow chickens potentially in their rear yard. That would include all settlements within the township, large and small, if there's residential units. So as I noted, the amendment is to make a minor change in section 6.4 of the zoning bylaw to delete the word chickens from the use of prohibited pets within an accessory structure. It's a very minor change from the zoning bylaw standpoint to some extent, but opens a big door to allow the changes for the animal control bylaw. So the main part of the change that we're looking at basically is going to be into the animal control bylaw. This is very similar how the zoning and the animal control bylaw work together, even in tandem with the kennel licensing, for example. So zoning controls where kennels are allowed, but the controls are more put in the animal control bylaw about how they operate. So as you can tell, there is a proposed amendment to the animal control bylaw for review, so people can understand the potential implications that would be looked at. So staff drafted some potential amendments to understand what the regulations would be looking at, and so the public could understand what they'd have to comply with. So right now we're suggesting potentially up to 4 hens. They would only be hens. They couldn't be roosters. We would set the location of where the structure could be on the property relative to your neighboring property lines. There'd be regulations about the size and type of structure, regulations around the fencing and securing it so the chickens stay in the chicken yard and the predators stay outside the chickens. There would also be regulations about the storage of the feed, looking after the manure. There would be regulations that would prohibit the sale of eggs from the side of the road, so we don't get into that issue. There would also be some regulations around the slaughtering of animals because we don't want to see that in a residential neighborhood. Neither does public health, by the way. And so those are a number of the regulations we'd be looking to put in place. It is also being looked at to regulate the chickens through a licensing or registry program, so we know where the chickens are. Then we know which ones have been viewed and checked to make sure they conform to all these regulations in case there's any complaints in the future. In addition, to kind of put this all together, staff worked together and put a backgrounder together, which includes these regulations as the changes, but also to kind of pull together some of the pros and the cons and some of the potential implications regarding the enforcement. So staff is the attachment. You can go through that on your leisure. Nighttime reading to review all that, but it does list a number of those type of items just to understand what the implications might be to allowing chickens in the rear yards. Something staff also did is we worked together to put a survey together online so residents could put their comments together. And we asked a number of different questions. We did summarize the answers we had received up until September the 23rd. So in the span of a little under a month, we had 149 surveys that were filled out. The survey is going to remain open until November the 1st. So we'll see what kind of comes out of that. Most of the residents responding were from Elmira, a few from Breslau, and even about the same from Conestoga. Generally, there seemed to be some support to allowing chickens in residential areas. The main support seemed to be more towards allowing them in on a single family detached dwelling property, not necessarily on a townhouse or multiple units. Also, there's some, there are most people supporting the hens, not allowing necessarily the roosters. People seem to be generally okay with the limit. It's kind of a bit of an unsurety there on the number of limits, but they did average out to about 4.9 instead of 4. There was not a whole lot of support on the licensing side. They suggested that they do bylaw enforcement by complaint basis. There was a lot of responses about the setbacks. So a lot of people do want to see the setbacks, just different variations along that. And the majority would just like it to keep it the chickens, it seems like. So as I mentioned, that survey is going to remain open until November the 1st. Give people time to review and give their comments still. There are a number of other comments people gave as part of the survey where they gave their own. There was a spot where they gave other comments and add to what they already stated. So there is a bit of a list summarizing that in the report also. We did receive comments from the Regional Waterloo Public Health Unit because we asked them for their opinion. Generally, they reviewed the draft animal control bylaw. We're basically happy. They just wanted to double check that what the slaughtering was in there to make sure that was covered off because they had concerns. They also provided staff with a fact sheet from the province on how to deal with backyard chickens. It appears they are starting to see a rise in reported infections from people handling backyard chickens improperly. So they wanted to better educate people to reduce those problems. And we did receive one letter from the community, which is attached to your report also. I couldn't really summarize it, so it's best to read it. There's a number of things in there that they're commenting too. As it's just a public meeting for tonight, we're not asking council to make a decision. We're just here to listen to whatever comments come in from the public and to so go forward from there. Any questions from staff?
From staff or for staff? Do we have any questions from council for staff? Councilor Shantz?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Vink. I have 3 questions, so I'll just run them through and then you can probably answer them all at one time. I was just wondering, you in your report, it says that Waterloo used to have backyard chickens and now they're not doing that anymore, only that allowing the ones that are currently there. And I was just wondering if we checked and asked the reason why they made that decision. The second one is we talked about manure and wondering if that is able to go in the green bin or not. And then the third one is, and maybe it is in the report and I missed it, but the backyard, I'm assuming, would have to be fenced if we're gonna have chickens, not just a coop for them. And that's all.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Shantz, yes. From what I understand, the city of Waterloo changed their opinion because they're having too many problems with backyard chickens. So they reversed their decision and only allowed the ones that had already registered to remain. So basically treating them as legal non-conforming. So they could remain, they just couldn't change their operations, or no one else could get any ones. In regards to manure and the green bin, I do not have an answer, but we could look at that for the recommendation report to bring that forward and mention it. As for the fencing, it's only required to fence the coop. It's not a requirement to fence the entire yard. So just the coop area, so they have an outdoor run. They need to have an outdoor run space and some perches, and that would have to be fenced so that they could not get out of that cage. So that's the requirement. That is what's proposed, that they couldn't get out of the cage. They have to be contained in there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vink. Councilor Merlehan had his hand up.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to Mr. Vink. I have 2 kind of different comments, but the first, after reading the letter that was provided, the person in the letter had a neighbor behind put a chicken coop up and put it kind of right on the property line and was closer to the neighbor's house rather than their own house. In this situation, would could you make it that the chicken coop has to be, within so many feet of the residence where the chicken coop is, so it's actually closer to the house, so that they're more mindful if it starts smelling, then it affects them and not their neighbors. That would be my first comment. And then the other one was just a curiosity on the number of 4 chickens, and probably Councilor Martin could answer this better than anybody else, but I'm wondering, is there like something with chickens that they need to be paired up? I know with dogs, we generally, I think it's like 3 is the maximum for having. I'm just wondering if we could be consistent on 3 chickens, and so that we know that it's not going to turn into some thriving egg business. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. We could write in regulations that would restrict it to keep it closer. Right now, it's generally speaking, you end up in the backyard and then in a corner, and most typical lots, it would just be somewhere in the back corner, not necessarily closer to the neighbor's house, one neighbor's house or the other. It would just be in the backyard. You would get maybe some questions on side lots where you might get a little bit closer to the neighbor's house, but we could write it in, take a look about writing something in along those lines. As for the number of chickens, we were looking at a lot of other municipalities, and the average or the basic number seems to be 4, like somebody picked 4. But yes, chickens do better with friends. They do like to have 1 or 2 extra. So by themselves, 1 is pretty sad. So they like to have some extra friends with them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Vink? Not seen any. We do have a delegation to speak to this. Voico and Victoria, just before we turn your mics on, we do have some instructions here. Registered participants, please be advised that tonight's meeting, are they in the meeting? They are in the meeting, right? They can hear this? don't want to have to read this one twice. Please be advised that tonight's meeting does not involve a question and answer period. Any questions you ask will be noted and the appropriate staff member will follow up with you at a later date. Staff are not available for questions this evening. However, you can always contact them by phone or email if you have further questions. Please keep your microphone muted and your camera off until it's your turn to speak. If your mic is on and you are disrupting the meeting, you will be muted. After you speak, please wait for any questions from council. If there are no questions, please turn your microphone and camera off again. So the delegates we have are Voiku and Victoria. And did I see their camera come on? There you are. So with that out of the way, you can begin your presentation whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
First, we just want to say thank you, everybody, for putting all this effort into this. We know it took a lot of resources, so we went through the literature and it looks really well put, so thank you for that. And thank you for allowing us to have a little talk about this. Just to have a little introduction, we're a family of 6. I think about within a month from now, we're going to be living in Elmira for a year, so we love it here. Everybody's friendly. We had no major issues so far. So in regards with the backyard chickens, we pretty much agree with your proposal to change the bylaw. We just wanted to have a small discussion on the couple of the cons topics. We understand there is pros and cons like any other issue. I'll just let Victoria to take over on the smell and health concerns.
Our argument for kind of the smell, as we all know, Elmira has lots of different smells. With horse and buggies, there's always manure on the road. The pet food, pet products, I'm not sure, Elmira Pet Products, the dog food plant, that one usually has a lot of funky smells coming through it too. And then also now that like pot is legalized, we have a lot of neighbors growing pot, which also smells, and when they smoke it, it smells as well. So that's kind of our argument on the smell. And I think if people have the chickens, that they would be taking care of it and cleaning it just like you would with a dog or a cat. They're potentially your pets, so you would be cleaning them and taking care of them.
Yeah, I think to sum it all up, we did put the examples, like we heard the conversation earlier about Waterloo changing their mind, but we did notice that Kitchener and Guelph are allowing chickens. So we kind of felt like Elmira being such a, more towards a farm community rather than a bigger city. And we know it's coming up and it's growing eventually, but that's pretty much what we thought, as a comparison, we would love for them to be allowed in here as well as in those neighboring communities. I think that's pretty much it from our side. Again, we thank you very much for allowing us to do this, and we appreciate your work.
Thank you very much. Don't go anywhere yet. I'm just going to ask council if they have any questions for the delegation tonight. Not seeing any. If you have nothing further, we will thank you for your time and your presentation. And we would ask that you turn off the camera and mute your microphone again. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There being no further speakers, I declare this public meeting to be closed. Thank you to everyone who participated in tonight's meeting. I want to remind you that no decisions were made or will be made, but all feedback will be included in a future report. Thank you to staff and to our delegation. Moving on, we have no presentations under delegations. We do have a delegation tonight. Before we get to that delegate, Mr. Bink is going to speak again. This is regarding zone change application and official plan amendment with the Stavanis developments. So Mr. Bink, you're back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is for OPA 3 2018 and zone change 8 2018 for Sawmill Development Corporations and Stavanis Development Inc. So it's a parcel of land on Snyder's Flats Road within the settlement, well, most of it's within the settlement of Bloomingdale. Well, sort of across from the municipal park and start the operations there. So what they're proposing is basically 6 residential lots. They're going to be long, deep lots running off the Snyder's Flats Road and 1 industrial commercial lot. Generally, the report, as outlines all the appropriateness of how it conforms to the regional official plan and the township official plan, as well as the provincial policy statements. Just to note, in terms of the regional official plan, compatibility has been addressed, where we're dealing with industrial commercial next to residential. So they've addressed that through some studies, and they will be implementing a noise wall next to the industrial commercial lot to the nearest residential, along with some noise warning requirements. So that will all be addressed that way. Hydrogeological issues were looked at and reviewed between the township and the region, and that has also been addressed. In terms of the township official plan, the lands are all designated urban, which means we can consider industrial commercial within that. So that's why they're proposing this 1 parcel be industrial commercial and to be zoned accordingly, and the remainder to remain residential R1. Just in regards to some of the development issues, they're going to be moving forward and having to do some work on Snyder's Flats Road to upgrade it to an urban standard and bring some municipal servicing in terms of stormwater into the road allowance and do some grading and drainage. One of the biggest things in the report you'll notice is the grading and drainage options. We're not sure which way things are going to go at this point in time. We're still working with the region potentially on the Sawmill Road approach, but we're not sure when that will proceed. They're still not sure if it's going to proceed in 2021 or 2022, which would hold up the applicants. And we're worried that the costs might be going up. So there's an option of going the other way and taking the storm water towards the Grand River through the private easement. And then the township would need access over that private easement. So we're keeping both options open to determine what's the best solution for all involved, as well as the least costly solution for all involved. So what will happen is that they will eventually bring back to council a lot and block agreement to determine the lot and block requirements in terms of grading and drainage requirements and how that will be dealt with exactly, as well as any of the conditions on the noise warning clauses. Excuse me, my throat's a little scratchy. As well as there'll be an agreement to address the roadworks at that time, as they will also go through future severance applications to create lots with the appropriate easements. So in terms of the official plan amendments, what's proposed here is to take a bit of land out of the settlement. So there's a little bit of land and strip at the very back of these lots that they're going to take out of the settlement and leave it into the farm as part of the farm. Then they're going to add a small part into the settlement next to the industrial commercial block at the very end. It's a very small piece. There is no net increase. Actually, there's a little bit of a net decrease in the amount of land in the settlement. There is currently a policy in the official plan that allows for that rationalization to adjust the boundary line there, so long as there's no net increase. So they're in keeping with that intent of the official plan. So the official plan will allow us to take those lands out, make them rural, add in the lands, make them urban, and then be part of the industrial commercial block. And then we're going to remove that clause that's speaking to the rationalization because it's no longer required. So that's the official plan amendment portions. In terms of the zoning, the residential lands will be in R-1, consistent with the rest of the community. Like I mentioned, there'll be very large, deep lots. We're talking about 200 meters in depth, but that's how this could work given the servicing requirements. But the front part of the lots do have to have their stormwater and grading flow towards Snyder's Flats. So we have to have the houses a little bit further back to make all that work. So there is going to be site-specific requirements for the R1 zone with the location of the houses so that they stay a bit further back than normal. But to make sure they don't go all the way back, we do have a requirement that they do have an increased rear yard setback. We also do not want any structures in the swale in the rear yard. So those requirements will be imposed in the site-specific for the residential. And as for the settlement commercial block, the C3 zone is proposed, also site-specific. We just had to narrow down some of the land uses just to make sure that they're compatible with adjacent residential. So there's no problem. So we just have to narrow down those land uses a bit. That's what's in the settlement commercial component there for the commercial side. So that's essentially what they're proposing to do. There was some public comments originally, a lot of it around how we're protecting agriculture, the servicing, et cetera. And all these have basically been addressed and noted in the report. If there's any other questions, the recommendation is before you from staff. Council, any questions?
Yes, any questions, Councilor Mohan?
Yeah, through you, Chair McMillan, to Mr. Vink. With this past 6 months, I guess, dealing with Snyder's Flats Road and the parking and the amount of people using that road, I'm just wondering if there should be some sort of waiver on the title of the property to I guess make the potential residents aware of the traffic and parking or something, because there is a GRCA lands right beside them that are public access. I can just see, the houses go up, and then people would be probably pretty irritated by how popular Snyder's Flats has become, and would probably want to make some bylaw complaints on that. But I'm not sure how you go about doing that, or if you think that's even warranted. I'd like to hear your comments on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor. I'm not sure it's really warranted. The GRCA lands are a little further down the road. Yes, they will have traffic flowing to and from them. But that's on any road. We do have traffic flowing to and from different locations. There shouldn't be parking up this far because it's quite a far distance up. In this case, they also have the road paved in front of them, so we won't have that dust issue. We won't have a dust issue. So it'll just be the more the traffic coming and going. There will be a sidewalk on this side of the road, so public pedestrian access will be addressed. So I'm not concerned about a waiver or the need for a waiver, but if council so requested, we could potentially add it to the lot and block agreement. In the lot and block agreement, you can add the clauses of, and such as the noise warning clauses, etc. We can add clauses like that.
Okay, I noticed that you didn't request a traffic study for that road, and I was wondering if you considered the traffic. And I don't know if Councillor Shantz would probably have a better idea of if this traffic was just due to COVID-19, or if that's traffic that's going to be there for the long term. Just, I guess, wondering your comments if that was considered when you declined for the applicant to do a traffic study.
So if you, Mr. Chair, so when we ask the applicant to do a study, it's based on what their development will demand, and if their development is going to cause a problem. We don't ask them to do a background traffic, okay, generally speaking. So the amount of traffic that was going to be generated by the application was minimal. We're talking 6 lots in a industrial commercial lot, all operating mostly during the daytime. So there wasn't a huge amount of traffic. The road can handle the traffic in that area, and it will be paved, like I mentioned, paved and urbanized. So there was no need, and the region didn't trigger it for the intersection either. So because it's a regional intersection, so we don't necessarily penalize the applicant for existing traffic on the road to just study that and what the implications of the existing traffic are. We would only look at what their traffic issues would be. In this case, it was pretty minimal for the lots that we would have there.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Vink. Thank you, Councilor Merlehan. Any other questions for Mr. Vink before we invite the delegation to speak? Not seeing any. So with that, we do have Megan Garrity of GSP Group and her team are with us this evening on behalf of their client and applicant, Stevanos Developments. Ms. Garrity, you have 10 minutes to present to council, and you may turn your microphone and camera on and begin when you're ready.
Great. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council and staff and public who might be here. As you mentioned, my name is Megan Garrity. I'm a senior planner with GSP Group here on behalf of the applicant. Also here on the line, I believe we have Michael Harris from Vandel Construction, Angela Crutch from GM Blue Plan, and also Hugh Hindy from GSP Group. I don't actually have a presentation to make. We just wanted to voice our we just wanted to agree with the recommendation report that planning has put together, and we just wanted to make ourselves available for any questions that you guys might have. So if there are are any. We're all here.
Council, is there any questions for Ms. Garrity? I have one. There's a Michael Harris there. Mike Harris is with you. Is he like planning on running for public office in the area anytime?
I already have a seat at the regional table, guys. So, but I do have a private life, like many of you do as well. So,
I'm just happy to hear there's another one.
no, I'm the Michael Harris, if that's what you're wanting to know, the Michael Harrison.
Oh, welcome.
We've already.
Councilor.
No, hey,
Thank
you very much, folks.
So council, if there are no questions for the delegation, there is a recommendation from staff there. Would somebody care to address that recommendation? Mayor Shantz? Are you moving the recommendation, Mayor Shantz? Excellent. Second, Councilor Shantz. Anyone to speak to the motion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you to staff and thank you to the delegation as well. Moving on, we have, sorry, I'm lost on my page here. 4, 5. Unfinished business, that's where we are, correct? Excellent. So we have no unfinished business. We're on to consent items. There's the consent agenda. Would anyone care to move approval of consent agenda? Councilor Redekop, thank you. Second, Councilor Merlihan, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Staff reports and memos. We have report number 1, the Wyatt Street lease agreement renewal. And for that, we have Director of Corporate Services and Clerk Val Hummel. She will provide council with an overview of the report.
Thank you. Report C20 identifies where the Wyatt Street Municipal Parking Lot in Elmira is and how it was developed. The lease agreements that need to be renewed are with the owners of 21 Church Street West, as well as 26, 32, 38, 44, 46, 48, and 50 Arthur Street South. This large parking lot in downtown Elmira is mostly on private property. It benefits the businesses in the downtown core of Elmira by providing free parking for employees and customers of all businesses. The Wyatt Street Municipal Lot also has a section set aside for overnight parking for tenants who live above the stores in downtown Elmira who would otherwise have no place to park. The lease agreements started in 1990 and are reviewed at 10-year intervals. The property owners were notified of the need to renew the agreements and all are willing to continue. If council passes the recommendation in the report, I will have the property owners sign their individual copies of the agreements and then bring the agreements back to council for final ratification on October 20th as a housekeeping item. Thank you.
Are there any questions, Ms. Holman? No. So there is a recommendation, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Would anyone care to address the recommendation? Councilor Merlihan moving. Second. Councilor Shantz, thank you. Anyone to speak to the motion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Second report, grants budget. We're going to Deputy Clerk Jeff Smith has a second report. Mr. Smith, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just share my screen with you. Just the what's shown on the screen in front of you are the grants that council has approved for the term of council, and whether if there is an inflationary increase that council had pre-approved before. Right now, if we go with the status quo or the standard process for the budget, you'd be looking at about a 1.5% increase over the council approved budget for 2020 grants. That represents about $750 increase with those inflationary increases. The purpose of this report is for staff to seek direction from council regarding what we should do for the 2021 grant application process. The standard process that we would typically do involves a opening of the applications, The deadline would typically be November 1st, and then council decides on awarding grants through a series of 3 reports between November 1st and budget in January. Just because staff heard that the council wanted staff to think outside the box for the purposes of this budget, we did suggest if you do not want to entertain any new grant applications for 2021, we could not open the application process, and then you'd be looking at the current, the budget that's in front of you right now on the screen. And of course, there are other options if council wants to provide any other direction for staff regarding 2021 grants. There is no staff recommendation here. We are seeking direction from council, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Is there anyone on council that has a question for Mr. Smith or a comment about possible directions that we could take? Councilor Martin?
Thank you. Just a comment that I'd make. I support the direction you're going. We've had a very unusual year. It'll be a very unusual budget. So there's 4 groups that are not going to get it. Not recommended that we support them. But the change I'd like to see is that the groups who are supporting, we don't give them inflationary increase this year. And I would also not open the door for any new applications.
So I don't see a whole lot of hands jumping up right away. Councilor Martin, are you interested in making that a motion?
I could do that.
You can do that. So just to recap, could you recap that quickly for us, Councilor Martin?
I can do that too.
Please.
I'm just trying to see how I word it. I support the top 4, but I wouldn't give them an inflationary increase. And I support the bottom 4, but not giving them anything. And I would not open the door for any new applications just because of the year we've had.
So
I don't think, in a matter of fairness, there's 4 groups that have always got money from us. We're not giving them anything. So I think the other groups can certainly give up their inflationary increase for 1 year.
So Councilor Martin is moving that the top 4 groups on the list receive the same amount as last year. The next 4 don't receive anything, and then we don't open the door to any new applicants. That's correct, Councilor Martin?
That's correct.
Is there anyone willing to second that? So, Councilor Merlihan, are you looking to speak or are you looking to second?
Well, I'll second it so that I can speak. Councilor Martin just jumped the gun there.
Sorry, Councilor Merlihan. You don't need to second it to speak. Mayor Shantz had her hand up. If there's nobody that wants to second that, we could move on to another motion or open the floor to discussion at that time. So if you do want to second it, you can. If not, then we can take another kick at the can.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor. It is seconded by Councilor Merlihan. Councilor Merlihan, Mayor Shantz did have her hand up there and withdrew it when we were talking about seconding. So if it's okay, I will go to Mayor Shantz first, if that's okay with you.
Yep, good.
Thanks. Just a question of clarification for Councillor Martin. And so when you say the last 4 will get nothing, you mean the last 4 will get no inflationary increase, not that they will get no budget amount. Is that correct?
Maybe I read this wrong. So we're still supporting all of them, since I look at it now in front of me, but the board don't get an inflationary increase. In my mind, I read it that we weren't supporting them at all, but I think I'm probably wrong.
So where does that leave the motion on the floor then?
I will withdraw it because I think I misread this.
So the motion's on the floor and it's been seconded, so we can't just withdraw it. It belongs to council now. But perhaps, Mayor Shantz, you could recommend a friendly amendment And if Councillor Merlehan is on board with that, then we could do a friendly amendment as opposed to, it's probably cleaner than withdrawing it.
Well, I think if I understand the intent correctly, and I would be okay with the intent, is that we leave the 2021 amount equal to what it was in 2020 without inflationary increase for these 8, I think it's 8 organizations, and we don't accept any other applications.
I think that does sound like that was Councillor Martin's
I would
intention.
support that.
Yeah, Councillor Merlehan, do you agree that that would be a friendly amendment to the motion that you seconded?
It's hard to say right now because I wanted to ask a bunch of questions that would have led me to one way or the other. So sure.
If we allow the friendly amendment, then you can have.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. We're back there. So there's a friendly amendment to the original motion that is moved by Councillor Martin, Councillor Merlehan, and now Councillor Merlehan to the motion.
Through you, Chair McMillan, to Mr. Smith. I'm wondering if we could talk about those 4 groups where initially were no for the inflationary increase. The School Safety Patrol and the Cycling into the Future. Now, presumably they got their money for this year. Do we know if they were even able to spend it this year? I'm just with all the COVID protocols, I'm kind of doubtful that that program would get off the ground this year, and whether or not they would need that funding. And the School Safety Patrol, I know it's something to do with some sort of training, but I'm not sure how active that is this year too, that funding couldn't just be forwarded to the next year, that they're holding on to it. If you could speak to that. I mean, I know we're not talking about a lot of money here, but again, this is a different year.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I do not know if those organizations spent all their money so far this year. I mean, there would be a couple months left, but I could find that out for council if they wanted that information.
Sure. I guess just a comment. Actually, Councillor Martin's first reading of the motion that he provided, I was probably more in line with until getting some information about the last 4, and I do support the not opening up the grants for this year. But again, I mean, if some of these groups aren't able to use it, I know even the Historical Society, they typically go out and do events, and I know they are quite active, and we want to support that. But if they had money from this year that we're able to push through to the next year, that would be probably worth noting rather than just a free handout, if that's what would happen. So those are just my comments.
Councillor Merlehan, I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but I mean, it wouldn't be the craziest thing to just amend the motion saying that, we'd like staff to follow up and explore whether the budget was able to be spent last year. If that's something that, I mean, we could handle that pretty quick as council.
Yeah. Maybe a deferral to the future. I mean, this isn't pressing or anything. This is just looking for, what council's thinking, so to speak. But if there's anybody else that would support it, I mean, otherwise, if you want to go ahead and vote for it, we can do it as well. But deferral, I would be fine with.
Councillor Shantz?
Thank you. Wonder if we can do 2 things. I wonder if we can decide, first of all, if we want to open it up. I think that's the one that is critical for having the advertising and things like that. So if everybody's okay with not opening it up, that would be one thing. And then we can defer this with more information for the future. And I think that would give staff the direction that they need for tonight. And then that way we can get more information for the future. And
you can split the motion, we can vote on it separately. And then Councilor Merlahan could defer the first part. So you could split it into two. The second part is we don't open it up. And then the first part is that we deal with the 8 that are there, and then Councilor Merlahan could make a motion to defer. And then, I mean, staff's just looking for some direction here tonight. I think that would give ample direction if I am reading the tea leaves here correctly. So Councilor Shantz, is that something that you're interested in entertaining? Okay, so the motion has been split. There's 2 different motions now, that the 8 groups that are there receive the same amount of money that they did last year, and that we don't open, and the second motion is that we don't open up for new requests this year. So let's deal with the second one first. Councilor Merlahan, to speak to that.
Yeah, if I have one question, we don't have to split it up if you don't want to, but is this motion, if this motion is something that we have to deal with at budget time, it might give an opportunity for these other groups to say, oh, by the way, we have these projects and we actually need the money. If this is voting for and we're bypassing the budget where this is already pre-approved, then I would like to have more information. So if somebody could speak to whether or not we're going to talk about this at budget time, then I'm fine with however it goes.
Sure. Just what we're dealing with right now is just whether or not we open up the grants to new people. So
okay.
Talking about getting more information about that would be in the motion that you're hoping to defer, if I hear you correctly.
Sure.
So this first one is just whether or not we want to open it up, and we've had a few people talk about that. So, Councilor Redekop to speak.
I'll move the motion that we don't open it up to any new groups.
I appreciate that. It's already been moved. It's already been moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Plant. Appreciate that, Councilor Redekop. So anyone else to speak just on whether or not we open this up to new applicants for this year? Seeing nobody to speak to it. All in favor of leaving the process closed to outside groups for this year? That motion is carried, so we're not going to open up the process to outside groups. Now we have the first part of the motion, which is just giving those 8 groups that you see in the report the same amount of money that they received last year. So Councilor Merlahan, if this was something that you wanted to move that we defer and we could get more information from staff in the future, we could do that. We would just need a seconder for that.
Okay, I only want to move to defer unless final approval will be at budget, and then I won't defer. So can somebody answer that question?
If we were to move that, Mr. Smith?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this may help. So council is authorized to make those decisions at budget time. The biggest question for at this point in October is, do you want us to open the grant application process for new applicants? And I think you've already made a decision on that tonight. If you want to make a decision on the amount existing groups will receive for 2021, you can have that conversation at budget time. And if there's any information that you'd like staff to have presented to you before that discussion, we're happy to get that information for you. The one question I have heard is the amount of money spent by groups that received grants to date. We could get that information. If there's any other information that council wants, you could let us know now. And if you wish, you could have that discussion during budget.
Councilor Merlahan?
Yeah, through you to Mr. Smith. I guess when you talk about more information, I mean, I know there's been significant government grants and given through the COVID pandemic, and I'm just wondering if you could get an update from all of the groups. I know the federal government has things on government about, or on, you know, private businesses double dipping on different programs and things like that. So if this was a year that, you know, we could do things differently or whatever for a 1 year pause or something on the grants. Again, I just want to get more information. I'm not super sold on that line of thought, just that we have the information, if it's not too much trouble.
I think staff were just looking for some direction here tonight. So if you did move that we defer that, we're not making any decisions tonight. I think staff, based on the conversation here tonight, have some direction that they were looking for, and then the final decisions could be left for a future date. Does that kind of?
Yeah, if the rest, through you, Mr. Chair, if the rest of council concurs with Councillor Morlahan's line of thinking, which is that for all of the groups, determine through background research what exactly was spent to date, what other funding may have been obtained to, you know, help offset their organizations running things this year. If that's the will of council, that that's the information they need, staff can gather that and have that available for the budget process. So if everyone concurs with Councillor Morlahan's line of thinking, that's the direction we need.
Okay, so I'll put a motion to defer the decision till budget.
Would anyone second that? Councillor Shantz? I don't think anyone has anything more to say. Nope. Councillor Shantz, I was wrong.
Yeah, thank you. I think Mr. Brenneman was looking for a little bit more direction as to whether they need to get more information or not. Not necessarily just deferral, but are we wanting more information from each of these groups? And I guess I would like for the last four would be good as to whether they could even proceed with their spending this year. The first four, I think, are probably can use the money, but that's my opinion. But if we want information on all of them, I'm okay with that as well by deferring.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay, so what if we did this? What if we deal with the motion to defer? And then we can just take a straw poll on whether or not we want more information going forward. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a motion to defer. If we move to defer, then we can just, you know, give a thumbs up if we'd like some more information. So there is a motion to defer on the floor. It is seconded by Councillor Shantz. All in favor? So that motion to defer is carried. So then the next question, as Councillor Morlahan, Councillor Shantz, CEO Brenneman has mentioned, is it the will of council that we ask staff for further information at budget time? So if I could just get a thumbs up from people if that is, you know, something that they're looking for. Like, we got 3.5 there, so that is that's great. So I think that satisfies the need of staff for direction. Thank you very much. Got a little bit messy there. I apologize for that. Moving on, item 3 here, Spruce Lawn Storm Sewer Agreement, and we do have a couple of declarations of pecuniary interest for this item. Those members, the mayor and that member of council has now left, so we are ready to go. So for the final report, we have this evening, Mr. Poupe, Director of Infrastructure and Services. Mr. Poupe, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman Millen. Through you to members of council, what is before council this evening is to allow Spruce Lawn Developments to proceed and to address the condition imposed upon them through a holding provision dealing with the outlet. So we have arranged for a proper outlet for Spruce Lawn to use Front Street, and that is identified through this report, and we are seeking council's endorsement of such and to allow the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement to allow this work to proceed to construction and implementation. And with that, I would take any questions council may have.
Council, any questions for Mr. Poupe? Seeing no questions. Sorry, Councillor Shantz, did you put your hand up? You moved the recommendation? Excellent. Anyone second that? Councilor Martin, excellent. Any discussion? Nope. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Coupe. Thank you, Council. Mayor Shantz, Councilor Merlehan, I think you are good to come back. Everybody's back. Excellent. Other business, Council, is there any other business you wish to discuss? Councilor Merlehan, sorry, yeah, Councilor Merlehan and then Councilor Martin.
Yeah, through you two, I'm thinking, Mr. Pomponi, this week, I think a lot of members of council received, and staff, I think, received a couple of different emails from people opposing a gravel pit in Maryhill. And the line of thinking is that Premier Ford has made it, some sort of public policy or some sort of statement to the effect that if people don't want, if they don't want a gravel pit or a quarry or something in their community, then they don't have to have it. And he supports that notion. I'm wondering if you can speak to the provincial planning policy and whether or not that applies to municipalities, that all of those planning principles are kind of get thrown out the window, and council can just listen to the residents that want it to be, they don't want a gravel pit, so they shouldn't have to get it, and they are the customer, according to Premier Ford. I'm wondering if you could speak to that and whether or not it needs to be a letter seeking clarification from the Premier on that, whether that's a provincial policy now that will be enacted across Ontario.
Mr. Paul, tell us what Premier Ford is thinking right now, please.
Sure, I can mind read Premier Ford. Through you, Mr. Chair. Difficult question to answer without having legislation in front of me. Generally, what my experiences have been with gravel pits is that the province has opened it up and made it a little bit easier to get gravel pits, quite honestly. I think that the comments by Ford, and you have to look at it in the context, and they don't have that in front of me, is that the municipalities and residents can certainly have their opportunity to object and express their concerns about them. But I don't think that they necessarily means that if the majority of people in the community don't want it, it's not going to happen. I think it still speaks to the test of the PPS, and as well as the Aggregate Resources Act and other ones to determine whether they are appropriate or not. And there still are those measures that you have to deal with when you're dealing with applications, such as traffic and dust and noise and some of the things that you've heard in the past. So I'd say it's not just a simple matter of residents don't want it, so it won't happen. I still think it's subject to the process. Residents still have that opportunity, and a decision made by council will still be subject to the LPAP processes.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, Chair, if that's okay. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, if you like, I can probably give you something a little bit more specific and in-depth on the comments made by the Premier, as well as the legislative context as well.
Okay, yeah, that would be appreciated. I think some clarity around the issue. I know when those types of applications come before council, there might be some confusion with the residents and what is available options to council. And in my experience, that hasn't been an option. But I think some clarity around those comments would be appreciated. Anyway, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilor Merlehan. Anyone else with other business? Councilor Martin?
Thank you. About 2 weeks ago, I saw an email about speeding in Maryhill, which is nothing new. It's nothing new in our township. But a few years ago, the Knights of Columbus told me that they were interested in fundraising and raising money to buy signs that would stay in Maryhill. I think Mayor Shantz had mentioned that sometime later. So my question is, did staff ever check with them or do any follow-up if they're interested in buying signs? That's my first part. And then, of course, I don't know when it was, maybe about a year ago, I sent an email out to everybody. And I wrote down who I thought we could approach to buy signs for Catherine Street and also Sawmill Road. And I'd also like to know if any follow-up was ever done with signs on those roads, because everybody tells us when there's signs, traffic goes about 10 kilometers an hour slower. I just like to know if there's any follow-up ever done on that.
Mr. Pupe, would you like to take a stab at this?
Sure, I will try. Through you, Chairman McMillan, to Councillor Martin. I do recall bringing that forward with the Knights Clumps out in Maryhill. I will have to look back and see what follow-up did occur. Just a generic statement, we do allow for fundraising to occur for radar speed signs, and township staff will install those. The only caveat would be that we would not do any maintenance on those signs, and when they are at the end of their useful life, they would be removed. We have followed up on this in Westmount Rose with that community. They had purchased 3 signs of their own that staff have installed. The community in Winterburn, we have certainly engaged that community regarding fundraising and let it be well known to them that that can happen. And we would certainly apply that that same approach to any other community in Woolwich. So I will look into specifically what the response may have been to the Knights Columbus group in Maryhill, though, and get back to you.
Councilor Martin, is that?
It's a start.
Be warned, Mr. Pupe. Councilor Merlihan?
Through you to Mr. Pupe, on a different type of sign, the township has some lawn signs available, and I know they were purchased, I think back in 2015, these big red ones that say, drive like your children live here, or something like that. I think currently our policy is to sell those signs, and I don't know how popular they've been, but I haven't really seen any, and I've always mentioned it to residents when they call about particular streets and say that the neighbors could put some of these signs up. I'm wondering if instead of making that a cost recovery type ordeal, that we offer those signs for free to residents in certain areas that they can give them back when they think they're done with them. And maybe you can just talk about that program, whether people have actually been using it.
Sure. Through you, Chairman McMillan, to Councillor Merlihan. Yeah, the program was initiated a number of years ago. I would say that it was well received. We certainly still do sell some of those signs. As far as giving the signs away, I guess I would sort of fall back to council, and if that's the will of council, to have that as a toolbox for any resident who has concerns regarding speed on their street. I would look for that direction, I guess, from council, and maybe something we want to discuss at budget time. But right now it is cost recovery, and I can look into the total number of signs, I guess, that have been purchased since their implementation and report back.
Okay.
Councilor Redicott?
Through you to Mr. Pupe, how much are those signs?
They're a minimal cost. I'll have to look back. I don't want to give a false number, but I believe they're below $15. They might be in around
Okay.
something like that.
Okay, good. Thanks a lot.
Anyone else? Any other business? I did have one. Tuesday, November 3rd is the night of the American election, and I don't know about anyone else in the room, but I think it could be a pretty significant night for Western democracy. We have a meeting that night. We have a couple of empty Tuesdays on either side of it, give or take a week or two. We also have the Monday. I was wondering if there was any desire from council to reschedule our meeting so that we could watch the rebirth or the burning of Western democracy. I don't want to be over dramatic here, but we could literally be talking about that. If not, fine. Councilor Merlihan?
I'd support moving it to Monday because November 3rd is my birthday, so that's pretty important too.
So the election is the second biggest thing.
Yes, I only asked for one thing on my birthday, and I won't say it.
Anyone else? Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chair, if it would be helpful, I have a copy of the calendar in front of me. I could put it up on the screen for you.
If there's no other,
If the rest will go with Monday.
well, if there's no other desire from council, I don't know if we're there yet. If nobody else wants to move it, we don't really need to look at the calendar. Councilor Shantz?
Yeah, I just checked my schedule. I'm free Monday night.
So we got a few of us anyway, so maybe it is worth pulling up the calendar. Councilor Martin?
Well, we should be home long before the results, and we may not even know the final results that night. So,
It's a good point. We might not know for a month.
yeah, so it's really here or there, but if we're using birthdays for leverage, mine's on Friday, so I wonder what I could get out of this.
We can reschedule for Friday.
Everybody's good with Monday.
Would everybody be okay with us moving it to Monday?
I'm okay with Monday if it suits everyone else. I'm flexible either way.
I'm okay with Monday too.
Staff, are we okay with that?
Yeah,
Ms. Hummer?
I think you need a motion.
Think you need a motion?
Yeah.
Sure.
Would somebody help me out and move that for me? Councilor Shantz, second. Councilor Merlihan, all in favor? Yes. It worked. All right, there you go, Councilor Merlihan. Don't say we never did anything for you. Any other business? Not seeing any. Outstanding activity list. Does anybody have anything to discuss regarding the activity list? No correspondence. There was some correspondence in there. Does anyone want to speak to any of the correspondence? No. Public notice, we have none. Notice of closed meetings, we have none. Notice of motion, anyone have any motions? No. Before we adjourn, I will remind those listening at home and council that we are holding a special council meeting right after this one. I was going to yield the chair to Mayor Shantz for the special council meeting, but given WestJet has conspired to keep me in this chair, I think I'll stay here. So with that reminder out of the way, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilor Martin, thank you. Councilor Shantz, second. All in favor? That meeting is adjourned. Thank you. So now we have the special council meeting. Do I need a motion to convene into this? No, we're good to go. All right. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? No. Resolutions. I'm on the right one here, right? Get some strange looks. Yeah. Mayor Shantz, you gonna help me out? Sorry, you're muted, Mayor.
There we go. I'm trying to call up my reports and do all kinds of things here. The recommendations from council, it would be the spruce lawn once again.
Oh, right. And then Councilor Merlihan again as well. Excellent. So there are no resolutions to come forward from closed council. Committee of the whole, the council convenes into the committee of the whole. Can I get a mover for that? Councilor Shantz, thank you. Second. Mayor Shantz, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. And then the recommendations from the committee of the whole. The first one is the Elmira Drain block assessments. Sorry. So we're gonna split this, right? Because there's three and we have two that have a pecuniary interest on one of them. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna do the first two and then we'll do the third one after that. So the first two, that the council of the Township of Woolwich adopts items of the summary of recommendations from the committee of the whole meeting of October 6, 2020 as follows. Number one, C27 2020, the Elmira Drain 1 block assignments. And number two, C20 2020 Wyatt Street lease agreement renewal. Would anybody move approval of that? Councilor Merlihan, thank you. Second. Councilor Shantz, all in favor? That is carried. So that is, those recommendations are approved. And now we will deal with the matter with the pecuniary interests. So same deal. Now the Council of the Township of Woolwich adopts items of the summary of recommendations from the Committee of the Whole meeting of October 6, 2020 as follows. Item number 3, IS 21-2020 Spruce Lawn Stormwater Sewer Agreement. Anyone care to move approval of that recommendation? Thank you, Councilor Shantz. Second, Councilor Martin, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Then we have first and second reading of bylaws. We can welcome them back now, right? Because we're just reading the bylaws, correct? Yeah, so Councilor Merlihan's back, Mayor Shantz is back, excellent. First and second reading of the bylaws, that the following bylaws be introduced and read a first and second time. A bylaw to authorize the execution of a private storm sewer installation agreement with Spruce Lawn Apartments for Seniors Incorporated. A bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of council, October 6, 2020. I need a mover and seconder for that. I thought I was just reading it. I need a mover and seconder. So
there's no, the inner interest people can still vote on this person?
they should not be in here.
Right, correct.
Yeah, sorry guys, I messed that up. So they are going to book it again, Mayor Shantz. Should I split it still?
The other one's just a confirming bylaw. Why don't you just have the rest of them deal with both the bylaws and have standing pat not vote on any bylaws?
Yeah, because you're confirming and adopting.
They're just confirming. The second one
Okay,
to confirm and adopt
Okay,
is so
so
minor.
we don't need them for anything then. Okay, excellent. Sorry for my confusion here. So I've read that aloud. Our mayor and our councilor have left. Councilor Shantz is moving that. Councilor Redekop second, all in favor? Perfect, thank you. Adoption of the proceedings of the Committee of the Whole. The Committee of the Whole rise and report to council. Moved by Councilor Martin, thank you. Second by Councilor Redekop, all in favor? That is carried. And that's it. That is it. No?
Final passage of the bylaws.
Final passage of the bylaws, like I said, final passage of the bylaws. That the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a third time and finally passed. They be numbered as bylaw number 68-2020 to 69-2020, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with corporate seal. A bylaw to authorize the execution of a private storm sewer installation agreement with Spruce Lawn Apartments for Seniors Incorporated, and a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of the council, October 6, 2020, moved by Councilor Redekop, thank you. Second, Councilor Martin, thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. And that's it, right? Adjournment?
Just adjournment.
That's all we're looking for. Adjournment. Motion to adjourn? Councilor Shantz, thank you. Second, Mayor Shantz. All in favor? That's carried. We're done. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry, everybody. Guys, gals. So now we just need instruction to, we're holding tight.